Okay, welcome to part 3 of my Adobe After Effects tutorial. In the first two, I just briefly went over how it all works, what it all looks like, and how to just get your new composition started. In this tutorial, I intend to just quickly jump into keyframes, a very important aspect of Adobe After Effects, but also I intend to just show you how to move things along in your timeline. So let's jump straight into it. Where we left off, you might find that actually something you want to just quickly do is change the colours of these two, because it can maybe be a bit confusing. What I would suggest is always make sure that your video is a certain colour. So I'm going to say my video is always going to be orange, and my audio, I'm going to say I'm always going to have that as blue. And all you do is, just like I'm doing, I'm just right clicking on this part, and then I can just pick whatever colour I want. So you can see it's changed it in the timeline. So now whenever I glance at it, I can see straight away, oh yeah, this is my audio, this is my video. Okay, moving on. So when we run through the timeline, you remember that we have this video that goes across, and then we have a blue screen. Now the blue screen was just the blue screen composition that was made as default at the very beginning. Now if I wanted to have that blue screen at the beginning too, what I could do is just move along this orange block, which is my video file. So I could just shift it along a little bit into the middle, and by doing so I can, at the beginning of my video, have a blue screen. So let's just see if that's right. I'm going to press play, preview, and you can see it went from a blue screen to the video to then a blue screen. Fantastic. Okay, so now let's see. Perhaps I want to introduce something new to this. Perhaps as I pull along this timeline, I want there to be a box whereby these letters seem to appear as if they are erupting from there, or coming from a box that perhaps travels across the screen as the letters come up. So how can I do something like that? Well, this is where we can start to show you how to use something called keyframes, which you'll find very useful throughout the use of this program, because it shows up so often, something that's pretty much attached to everything you do on here. So let's see, perhaps I want to start it right from where the first letter begins. So let's see, you can just start to see the first letter appearing and this one down here. So what do I want to do? Well, what I can do, and you'll find this also useful, is I'm going to right click in this tab here, right click, and I'm going to say new solid. Now when this comes up, you can see it comes up with the title Deep Turquoise Solid 1. Fantastic. I'm going to keep that as that title. I would suggest always making sure that you're using titles and editing your titles so that you can keep tracking it, because this can all get very busy as you go on and create more complex compositions. So make sure you do title it so that you can keep track. So I'm going to say I want the color to be green. It's already green. Let's make it a little bit darker and say OK. Fantastic. So I'm now going to click OK. So you can see straight away I've got this square block of colour, and you can see on my timeline down here that it's showing up, let's see, deep turquoise, as this red band here, this red block. Now I don't want it to be red, I want it to be obvious as to what I'm doing. So we can come over here to the label, we can right click, and I can say, oh look, there's a dark green here. I'm going to say make it dark green. That's my block. Now I want to change the shape of it. How can I do it? Now there are a couple of hotkeys you can use, but for now I won't run through them. I'll just simply say there are all these little tabs around the corners, and there's this central anchor point. Now the anchor point lets you shift things left and right or around, and the edge points, naturally, let me put it back in the middle, let you change the size whilst it lets you select it. So I'm going to say I want the box to be kind of this size. Okay, that looks good, and I want it to be down here. Oh sorry, I double clicked that and the layer came up. Let me cross that off. Let me drag the actual anchor point, the middle bit, and I'm going to say I want it to be here. I'm going to put it a bit behind the letter just to illustrate something a bit later on. So you can see now I've got a little box there. Now on my timeline you can see the block extends across the whole of the timeline, but I don't want this block to appear throughout the whole timeline. So I need to shorten this. So how do I do it? It's a simple way. You can go to the edge and you can simply drag it to where you want it to start in the timeline, and I know I want it to start there, and then I'm not sure when I want it to finish, but I obviously want it to finish and remove itself from the timeline once all of the letters come through. So let's see, let's drag it all the way down, and that's the last letter. I'm going to say, right, I want it to end there. Let's do the same thing. Let's drag that all the way up to the timeline where it ends. So now I've shortened the green block, and that means it'll only appear during that time slot, which is great. So Now I said I wanted the letters to appear like they were coming out from there. So how can I do that? Well, what I can do is I can go to the time point at which I want this block to start moving. And you can see here it's at this point here that I want it to start moving, and I need to now toggle the position feature. To do that, what I can do, there are some shortcut keys which I'll discuss in another tutorial, but for now we're going to go over here and we're going to go to this side arrow and we're going to click it, and it's going to come up with this little transform title, and I'm going to click that. And then I can see all these little aspects that I can change, and I know I can change them because they've got these clocks here, and these clocks are literally at which point you want to start a change. So for example, I want it to start moving from this point of the timeline, so at 10 frames, maybe that's what's that, maybe 13 frames that is. It is 13 frames because it says it there on my timeline. So I can click position because I want it to move, and then over here we've got kind of coordinates. So one of them will let you move things left and right. Let's see, left or right, depending on which way I drag it, or you could edit the number yourself. And the other one lets you go up and down, up and down. So that's great. That's just illustrating that. And I haven't done anything yet. I've said at the very start I want things to move, so I'm going to say position. Click that. Now this means I have toggled a keyframe, so it's at this keyframe that I want something to happen. So right now we're saying that at this keyframe the position is this and this. Basically it's exactly where it is. But as it goes across, and I'll just say when it gets to over here, I want it to have moved across to this point. So what do? I drag my timeline all the way across to where it disappears, and I say, let me just make it appear again. I say I want it to have travelled all the way to here. So we know that this one here went left and right, this first one. So I can either move it left and right like I did before, or I could just grab the middle, grab the anchor point. I can click it and just drag it where I want it. So I'm saying I want it over here. So let's unclick it, and now I've got a new keyframe here, and this means it's going to now move. If I just go right to the beginning and I drag this timeline along, and you can see it appears and then it starts to go across. Now you can just see the letters are coming out slightly ahead of the box at times, which I don't really want. So what I can do is actually alter the keyframes to amend it, maybe speed it up. So if I shorten this distance, this will appear a bit further ahead. So I'm going to move this keyframe in, and look, you can see my block is just going to be there this time round, which is more helpful for me. It looks a bit more authentic. Let's go right to the beginning, and look, it looks like it's coming right out. Perhaps I need to go a little bit faster and see if that's a bit better. Yeah, that's good enough. That's good enough to illustrate that I can move time frames. Fantastic. So you've just learned. Let me just minimize this. So you can see it can start to get quite cluttered, but you can change other things like the opacity, the rotation, the scale, and even the anchor points. So it's all very, very useful, and all you need to do is toggle the time, the stopwatch, at the point at which you want to affect a change, and then decide where you want that change to stop or alter. Move your time frame over to that position, and then change the parameters here, and then just see what you've done. To get rid of all of this kind of cluttered mess, you can just click that just as you would anything else, make it smaller, and even make it even smaller. So I'm back to my three layers here that are viewed quite simply. So now that I've done that and I can see it's moving across rather nicely, I can preview the whole thing by playing my audio, by pressing the RAM preview button as I discussed in a previous tutorial. Fantastic. And what I'm going to now say is I want to render the video. Now if you want to see how to render videos, you need to watch tutorial part 4. So thanks for watching. I hope it was useful. I hope it wasn't too much info to grab onto, but catch you on the next one. Bye.